Welcome to the 21st Century Work-Life podcast, where we talk about how the world of work and our attitudes to work are changing. To check out our show notes and to get in touch, head over to virtualnotdistant.com. Hello and welcome to the first guest episode of 2024 of the 21st Century Work-Life podcast. My name is Pilar Orti, and in this episode, I had the pleasure of meeting Jeanna Barrett, who is the founder and chief remote officer of First Page Strategy. And we recorded this a few months ago, but still, I think what she talks about is evergreen. But I'll let her tell you all about her company, her story, her values, and we even got into some detail of her internal operations, which I always find fascinating. But before I leave you with our conversation, let me remind you of my email address, Pilar, Pilar, at virtualnotdistant.com, in case you have anything to add to the conversation or any thoughts, or indeed, if you just want to say hello, that you're listening. But for now, let me introduce you to Jeanna Barrett. Hello and welcome to the 21st Century Work-Life podcast. If we haven't met before, my name is Pilar Orti. I'm your host. And for today's episode, I'm going to invite you to meet with me for the very first time, Jeanna Barrett, who is the founder and chief remote officer of First Page Strategy, a distributed growth marketing agency. Welcome, Jeanna.
Hello, nice to be here. Thanks for having me today.
Well, I am thrilled because I've got lots of questions to ask you. So yeah, I'm sure you'll satisfy my curiosity. I think the first thing is probably if you could give us just a little bit of introduction about, let's just start with First Page Strategy, the kind of business it is, location of employees and stuff, and then we'll start to dig into your story.
Yeah, I'd love to. Okay, so First Page Strategy, we call ourselves FPS for short. We started in 2016, have been fully remote and distributed across the US and other countries since then. We focus on doing growth marketing and using data and big ideas to produce growth for product-led brands. So any brand that SaaS companies, tech companies, startups trying to acquire customers online and grow. We use our core services of SEO, content, paid, lead gen, data and analytics to do that.
Nice, thanks. And so so you started remote in 2016.
Yep.
Did you start off being remote? What's the origin of the organization?
The origin is that I wanted to live my life remote, and I wanted to build a company, work for a company that I wanted to be at that didn't exist already. I was in San Francisco. I'd been working in the tech industry for 10 plus years. I was burned out. I was only 34 years old. I just was like, this can't be happiness. This can't be my life. Corporate America. I'm sure if you don't have many American guests that talk about this, like it's kind of, the American corporate America burnout is a real thing, happens to a lot of people. So I moved to Belize and I just kind of decided to let go of my career. And I was like, I'm just going to freelance. I'm going to consult. I don't really know where that's going to take me, but I don't really care because I just want to have fun, be calm, see the world. I don't want to be stressed out anymore, work, 40, 60 hour weeks. So I actually started First Page, it was kind of an accident. It landed in my lap. Someone reached out to me. They needed an SEO agency. They were just firing an agency that didn't produce results for them. And I was kind of faked it till I made it. I was like, okay, cool. Don't know how to pitch someone, but I can pitch you and I'll, find someone to help me out on this work, and just kind of started a little agency with 2 people. And now it's grown to about 20 to 30 people, full-time and contract.
Mm-hmm. And distributed all over the world, or have you found that you're more likely to work with people in certain areas?
As remote founders know, you cannot just hire anybody anywhere. You have to have a company of record in the countries that you hire people in. So I started my business. I grew my business quite honestly on contract only until I was able to get enough work to offer people full-time jobs. Right now, we have a small set of full-time people that are US only, and it's on my growth plan to expand to hire full-time in other countries. But right now we only do contract work in other countries because we haven't set up one of those, like remote.com or employer of record tools yet to be able to do that. So it's on a growth plan.
Yeah, it's much more complicated, I think, that many people realize that actually the working from anywhere movement is very strong. However,
Yeah.
there's still a lot of logistics to get through.
Yeah, that's kind of like, I think one of my pet peeves as a remote founder is that people are like, oh yeah, we were remote after COVID. And I'm like, well, there's a whole different ball game to being remote and like literally just taking your company and putting everybody at home than being distributed and remote first and setting up your company to operate like that and understanding all the laws, all the rules, all the processes and tools and like ways of working that come with that. It's an art and it takes someone knowing what they're doing. And I think that's why there's so many conversations around like, remote is failing and people are unproductive. But it's like, you're not setting it up properly. You're just thinking that people just go home to work and that's all they do, so.
Yeah, so behind, from what I've seen, especially from the website of your organization, there's a whole philosophy and there's a whole set of values behind why you're still remote and distributed and what it means for you.
Yeah.
Tell us about those. So what are some of the things that you are really ensuring that the organization keeps doing and that you keep doing within the company as well?
Yeah, wow, there's so many there. I can say that like my vision as a founder is, my 5-10 year goal is that we want all of our people to be able to live what we call the FPS life. So that's a life where you're able to do work that you really love, you're fairly compensated, you feel like you're listened to, your voice is valued, but you have a balance and a harmony with work and home life, and you're able to travel, spend time with your family, grow a family, and all those things without feeling stressed and burned out. So everything we do from an operations and internal process standpoint, and also culture and values, like tries to ladder up to that vision. So I'll give you an example. With the anti-burnout stuff, like agency life, we're an agency life, they have a reputation for being burned out and really like burning people out and putting, 10 clients on one person's plate. But we are one of the companies that have done 32-hour work weeks for quite a while. I think the last 3+4 years, we've done 32-hour work weeks. And we track time in a bandwidth tracker to be able to understand like how full are people's plates. Is there capacity for more client work, or are you maxed at your 32 hours to make sure that we're like living up to that promise? We also have a lot of boundaries with work time and working async and sync and making sure that people have, offline time and you don't feel like just because you're a remote worker, you're on 24 hours a day, which is what I hear from a lot of people. So that's just a small example. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yes, of course. And I think what it's really important is that you've put yourself as far as possible from the just because you can, let's do it. As in, like you say, now if we work through technology, we could be on all day because that's the danger of async.
Yeah.
However, you've very deliberately done that, put those barriers and stuff. So can I ask you about the structure of the company? I mean, you said there's about 20, 30 people. Do you have managers? Do you have departments? How are people accountable to you as well? Just give us an overview.
Sure. I run my business on EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System. So it's been like life-changing for me. We've implemented that now a little over a year. So we do have a leadership team. We have like a fun travel theme at our company, everything. I'm not a super corporate person. So, instead of saying executive leadership, we say like the takeoff team or the pilot team.
Okay.
So we have like some fun travel themes. So our leadership team, we're called the takeoff team. It exists of people that own business divisions. So we have the people that own growth, sales, and marketing at the company. People that the person that owns operations, the person that owns client services, and the person that owns people. And then from there, they have their own teams. And we keep accountable just following the EOS. guidelines is that everybody builds rocks basically, or goals that you're going to commit to every quarter. We have a weekly kind of async and sync version of keeping up on each other that way. We post some things weekly in Slack, and then we get in on a short meeting once a week to kind of sync on where everybody is at with the accountability of that stuff. So keeps everybody rowing in the same boat, in the same direction. And as a leader and a manager, you know, at the top, it's been really cool to see how it all comes together, like following EOS.
So I don't know about EOS, so I'm going to ask you some questions about what you just said.
Yeah, please. I'd love to tell you.
Oh, so the rocks that you're mentioning, for example, so the goals that people set for themselves, are those visible in any way? I mean, you said you use Slack to maybe check in, but are the rocks visible and stuff?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, everything is visible, right? So that's a big thing with remote work and async is that we try to like remove silos and barriers all the time. So we always talk out loud about what the quarterly rocks are for the whole company. And then everybody at the company has their own rock. So we talk about those things in our all hands. From a leadership perspective, we kind of keep each other accountable about what we finished each quarter, what's happening the next quarter. We also track it as a team in ClickUp, which is our project management system that our whole company is built inside of. And so anybody at any time can go in and see the status. We have on track, off track, and weekly milestones to paste and like get things done at the end of the quarter.
How have the challenges changed then? Over the last few years, from you and a couple of people to starting to have actually, yes, you're building on this operating system, but what are the challenges for you?
Gosh, it feels like your job's never done, you know? Like every year I know we get smarter. I know that like my business is smarter than last year, and last year was smarter than the year before. But there's constantly like, it's so fascinating to grow a business because there's constantly layers of improving it, right? And layers of improving what your employees experience. And so for me, what was really interesting is I made a big mistake last year. I decided to hire full-time for one of our clients pretty rapidly. We were trying to hire 2 or 3 people a month. We grew up to 40. And then we just realized like, gosh, like our systems, people and operations systems, like we're hiring people before we had some systems in place, like even a performance management system, right? So there's just so much to figure out. And I think I'm really methodical about it because I want to do it right. I'm coming from a standpoint of like, gosh, I don't want this like these awful processes or corporate systems that make people groan and roll their eyes, and like what feels right to set up as a process, but how do we not have too much process, right? So like we approach things pretty thoughtfully. Might take us a little bit longer just because we want to get things right, but yeah, so I don't know, I rambled a little bit there, but yeah, there's just like every year new challenges and new things that you have to layer on. So
yeah, I think when you're going into when you're moving more into an async mode of working, the processes need to be laid down, or else, I mean, you need more of that, don't you?
Yes. And that's what I've gone deep on in the last 2 years. I'm a big member of the Running Remote community. I've been in the Slack group for many years. I went, you know, like most people that are remote are part of that community, and couple years ago really caught on the conversation about, you know, documenting everything. And I felt that hardcore because as a founder, I'm the only person that is constantly at my company pretty much if people come and go, right?
Yeah.
So I have this legacy knowledge that is hard when like a new operations person comes in or what have you. And so the documenting thing, it takes so much time and it's a lot of work. And so that's like building that is one thing, like this massive employee kind of guide of how we do everything. So that's taken us, you know, 2 years to kind of build upon. We're keep going, but then when people leave, your intellectual property doesn't go with them. So
yeah. So how do you get? Well, actually, you've set up the main chunk of the documentation. So basically most of what was in your head in a way. And then as people come and go and as projects evolve, have you got a way of making sure that the documentation is up to date or that it evolves as things move on?
Yeah. Yeah, we set up like recurring quarterly, monthly tasks for a lot of that stuff, right? That's the beauty of ClickUp. You can have templates and reoccurring tasks. So, and that's another thing we've been building for the last 2 years is like once you set that stuff up, then you can kind of like just let it run run itself. So we do quarterly checks of all of our documentation, just because things rapidly change, especially in the tech world, right? And as you're improving a company and changing a company. And so, and people have documents that they own. So we have our company processes are called roadmaps. And then our documentation of people's roles are called parachute plans. Like, you know, as if you had to jump out of an airplane, like what's going to help you survive. So they're in charge of keeping their parachute plans up to date, also on a quarterly basis. That way, if a VP of operations leaves, the new VP of operations comes in and can read this parachute plan, and it's how they do all the things. It's how they send out, you know, birthday gifts. It's how they do our contracts. It's how, and so that's, those are some of the things we focused like pretty hard on in the last 2 years.
That's really important. And I think it's the real difference between adopting really a remote first mindset is that you're capturing and you're documented and you're turning into processes a lot of stuff that actually we might be used to doing more spontaneously.
Yeah.
However, you're creating a very defined, tight culture.
Yeah. And then the thing is like, this is not, I've thought about doesn't have to just be for remote companies. Also, like I thought about all the times I sat in house at a company and I left a role, all my knowledge left with me, right? Because like there was no process of documenting what everybody did all the time. And sometimes you can train somebody if you're deciding to give 2 weeks, but if, you know, a lot of companies lay people off, and when they lay off all the workforce, that workforce goes without any documentation or knowledge of how they did things. And so, yeah, I'm pretty big on this train now. And it's hard because we're an agency. So we work with a lot of clients, right? And so when we work with clients, I'm like, it sticks out to me so bad. Like, oh, you guys shouldn't be doing this in Slack and you should be documenting this. And like, so it's just, sometimes it's a blessing and a curse because I really see like the problems and how other places do their business operations.
Well, you do have in your title now, if I'm correct, Chief Remote Officer as well as founder. So before I forget, I just need to mention that the strength of the whole travel metaphor in the company, because again, many people who've started to have more remote employees or whatever, especially after the pandemic, they're always worried about culture, and language is such a strong, it just is so strong, especially when you have like contractors and stuff. So I think it's wonderful.
I'm a marketer, right? So I have a branding background. So I have like so how do I brand my company? How do I make things really fun and cool and sticky and like a lifestyle of working at my company? So that's kind of how that came about.
Yeah. And again, so I just go off on one, but there's so much stuff falls into place when I speak to people. It's that, again, making that transition and developing these new cultures for people who want to have either more remote people or go remote first, is that you need to bring all the different parts of the organization to help with this. Because again, this is not just IT, it's not just operations. Actually, you do need the creative people and the branding to go with it as well.
Yep.
Yeah,
yes.
really nice.
Exactly.
So going back to your Chief Remote Officer title, why do you have that title?
Yeah. You know what? My former title was Chief Marketing Expert. And I have found that like, I've just gotten further away from marketing and further kind of passionate about marketing. And my passion really lies now in like building a beautiful remote first culture and people first company. So I like to be involved in reading about the remote and distributed company topics. I am involved in groups that are talking about remote best practices. And so I was like, you know what? My role in the company is more about building the best remote company than it is about being a marketer anymore. I've passed the baton down to my client services teams to be the marketers now. And so, so that I just decided to change my title to kind of align within my company to understand where I focus my time on.
Wait, I don't know if you know Tammy Bjelland from Workplaceless. I was just recording with her a couple of days ago, and she was mentioning, she's a consultant, she creates courses for remote workers, and she was mentioning about companies like yours who also almost, in a way, starting to, it's going to sound a bit strange, but productizing the way in which they work and using that to advocate for it. So it's really interesting that...
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's for real what we're doing, right? And this idea, like, I believe strongly that there needs to be a head of remote inside companies to get this right. We're starting to see that role crop up,
Yeah.
across the board. There's lots of my peers in these various remote groups and networking things that have these titles, and their role at their company is only to focus on how they do remote right, which I love. And that's what I'm saying. Like, it really takes someone that has expertise or the knowledge to kind of keep up on what's happening at the forefront of this in order to do it right within a company.
So I had a note again here about the lovers of time freedom that you have on the website
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you about that because there's always the tension about the freedom that we have as individuals with our time that remote gives us. But there's also the tension when you're working with others within an organization, team, or a company. How does that look like inside your agency? How are people available to others when they need to versus having more agency over our own time?
Yeah, first of all, time freedom, that's a benefit we talk about. It's like one of our biggest benefits that we offer is this idea that you're going to have more days off, more time to run your life. So that's what time freedom means. But internally, it's the whole async sync conversation that makes sure we let people work within the times that work for them and to have the free time that they need. And it is difficult to get this right. We're constantly talking about this. We're constantly teaching about this, right? So one thing that we have to do as an agency is sync up at a certain time because we have clients. So we need to be able to schedule calls with our clients where we can get our team on the phone. So we have established what we call sync hours across the agency where we want everybody to be available for a call, not last minute because we will never schedule a last minute call, but during your work week, we need your calendar to be open during sync hours and you need to be accessible during sync hours. You don't have to be in front of your computer, but for instance, during sync hours, which are 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central Time, if I have something to do, I just need to make sure at that time, my team can reach me on Slack or, pretty much on Slack. But other than that, everything else goes in ClickUp, right? So you can take days off or take time off or take your children to school or volunteer or get your pedicure, whatever it is that you need to do. Just get your work done and ClickUp. And we just make, as long as you deliver by your deadlines. And everybody works in ClickUp. So it's you can talk to everybody at any time of day. If you this is the beauty of async, right? If somebody's working at 10 o'clock at night, because they were at the beach all day or whatever, then in the morning, their coworker will see that work and sign in and respond in ClickUp. So it seems to work for us.
Nice. And how about the clients? How do the clients respond to this kind of working and how do you adapt when you're working with clients?
Yeah, that's probably the trickiest part. And that's something, we have a client where the culture was really clashing with our culture. And so we've just decided, and that was a legacy client that started with us early. So now we're just very honest. We have kind of a client packet that's this is the way that we work. You can expect a response from us within 24 hours. And we're very clear about the fact that we, don't work for 2 weeks at the end of the year because we have an extended Christmas break where things close. And so and we shout about our culture and our 32 hours on the website too. So it's not something we're trying to hide, but none of this, and this is very important to say because all the naysayers of remote work or 32-hour work week or not being able to collaborate, whatever you say, none of this affects our client results. So our clients are happy with the work that we do because we're producing growth. They've doubled their revenue. They've tripled their traffic. We're bringing in better paid ad results than the last company they worked for. So we just do really good work. So I think there's a quality of work and an expectation at my agency, even though we have time freedom in 32 hours, you're still expected to produce good work.
Yeah. And have you found that clients, either current ones or potential ones, have changed their attitude as to your instant availability since the pandemic, or or not?
I think it's more about the ones that don't work with for us. There might not be a longer term partnership, and it's attracting brands that work like that already. Like, for instance, one of our biggest clients is Expensify, and they have a really cool way of working that is different than us and even more async than us. And we're trying to like understand that. And so they do, async responses and no meetings and only async in Slack. Like, then the whole company can chime in. So we don't have presentations with them.
Mm-hmm.
We just post like our strategy in a channel, and the whole company can chime in at any time and ask. So it's fascinating, right? But they're focused on remote work and async, and so they're a fit for us, right? So I'm finding that it's attracting just more companies that are like, oh yeah, that makes sense because we work like that too. So
I wonder if we start seeing that as well as having the employer-employee fit or the worker and employer fit, whether we're also going to have that client fit around remote first, async stuff.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, interesting. Hadn't thought of that. And so as Chief Remote Officer, what are you looking forwards to? Or what are have you got any thoughts about how the organization might evolve, or how's that looking for the future? You said you like thinking ahead as well.
Yeah, for sure. We're really trying to like make the in-person events work for us right now. Like, it does in the past, the size of the company and the revenue and the budget just hasn't really allowed for this in-person events, but we send out what we call a team pulse survey biannually, and we're really hearing people shout that they like want to get together in person. There's a lot of talk around in-person events being important in remote work, and you should have an in-person strategy in addition to a remote strategy. So that's something that I really want to do next year, is try to get the core group together and meeting each other in person. There's some people at my agency I've worked with for 4 years plus, then I've never met them in person. So so that's kind of where we're looking. And then we're just looking at how to, like you said, almost productize what we're doing and our offer to clients. And so really setting us apart from other agencies and talking, and like our uniques that we talk about, our 3 uniques, having something to like back it up and making it a product offer almost. So that's where I'm focused.
Which are your 3 uniques? You might have mentioned them, but just in case I missed them.
Oh, yeah. Our 3 uniques are: we hire the best in insert location here, and we don't outsource work or hire junior account managers to manage our clients. So we only have gold standard experts. 2, our process is bespoke to high growth product led companies. And 3, we're not a traditional agency from our culture to our operations.
Nice. So you're thinking of productizing that more. And would that mean helping other organizations adopt that model, or does that mean making that more explicit in how you come in? And what would that look like?
It means actually building something that stands behind those statements, right? So if we're saying we hire the best and we're bespoke to product-led brands, how do we stand behind that, right? So we hire people that have tech backgrounds, they have certifications in XYZ, they take a training on XYZ, we have a quiz that we built and you have to pass this in order to come into our company. Like, just being able to build things that stand behind those offers.
Great. I have one last question for you then, building on that, and then I'll ask you if there's anything else you want to add, which is the hiring aspect of it. Yeah. So just can you talk us a little bit about what that might look like when when do you hire or bring a new contractor in, and then what that might look like given that it's distributed?
The hiring, when to hire is like back to the bandwidth and the capacity thing. So with agencies, you have to be able to track like how much work you have coming in, and then how much people have on their plates, and when you're going to hire a new resource to manage all of that. So we do that we use Time Doctor, so we have like bandwidth tracking and capacity tracking through there. So once we know we're going to hire someone, or we've identified in our forecast and our financial forecast for the year that we're going to hire someone, we have a super complicated, very set out process. It's in a ClickUp template It has, 30 steps to it. We deploy it, and then it has like all the people that have to do XYZ. So, like this person writes the job description, this person determines salary, this person does this, we choose. And then it's just like a hiring process that aligns to our core values, because we really want to make sure, like I said, we're saying we hire the best in any location across the world. And so we really want to make sure that we are finding the best in those roles. Like I said, we produce gold standard work. We don't outsource or have like, younger people managing people's accounts. So we try to bring experts in the field. So we do a rigorous process where we're like also require a project where people have to present to us a panel remotely to make sure that you're able to talk to clients, present to clients, and that you know what you're talking about. So the hiring, it's hard, right? Like, I don't know if you can ever super nail that and get that perfect. Like, we definitely have situations where once people are in the door, and this is what I see, once people are in the door, it's really hard to tell people how our operations are set up to be remote first. But then once we get people in the door, I see people really struggling to understand it and get it and like working ClickUp and communicate appropriately. And it's, sometimes that's a make it or break it, really. But we're trying to figure out how do we interview for that.
Yeah, I think that the ability to work remotely the ability to work remotely in a certain place, because as we know, different people work remotely differently. And I think that it's that fit takes a very long time. I think probably more than working one office or another, actually, because there's the culture, the relationships, but there's actually what does remote mean in this place, and the things like the rhythm at which you work, the async, all of that.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice, good. Well, Jeanna, this is great. It's given me an idea of, a very light idea, obviously, because as we say, this is very deep and complex. And I love it. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to our listeners, or anything you'd like to add about everything we've been talking about, or the world of remote?
Yeah. No, I mean, just if you want to find more about us, you can visit us on firstpagestrategy.com. I also have a podcast where I talk about remote culture in the tech and marketing world. And so we have some marketing leaders come on, and we have like product leaders come on, and we have other people that lead companies or positions in remote come on. And so if anybody would like to be a guest on our podcast, that's an open invite.
Well, tell us more about that. So what's the name of the podcast?
Remotely Cultured.
Remotely Cultured. Excellent. Listeners, you don't have to want to be a guest. You can go and listen to it now. That's the first one.
Yeah.
And second, if anyone, because there are some people who might be suitable for the show, what kind of people do you usually bring onto the show, or what kind of people approach you to come onto the show?
Yeah, so we look at entrepreneurs, founders, or leaders of marketing and tech companies. So we're and every episode we touch on how long they've worked remote, where they're at in the world, and some remote topics. But then we usually go deeper into like an entrepreneur topic, a marketing topic, or a product topic.
Excellent. So really specific to the industry and also to the remote. I had one question, but I think, one last question. Sorry, now that you've mentioned this.
Yeah.
What are the kind of things, or one thing that you've learned from the podcast, or something that you've discovered yourself as a podcaster through the show?
Oh my gosh. I just think it's like such a wonderful way to network now, because we are all at home and in front of our computers or working remote, and there is less in-person events now, right? And it's harder to kind of break through the noise and really get to know people on LinkedIn, because people are kind of just shouting about and trying to like gain followers. And so I've loved every conversation of either I've been on someone's podcast or they've been on mine. And it's really a way to build your network. And there's opportunities I've had, like, a new tax accountant, or I've talked to somebody that runs remote events that now I'm looking at working with my company. And like, it's just this, it's opening up my circle. And so I just think it's such a beautiful way to build relationships.
Yeah, excellent. So Remotely Cultured, and how, if they want to get in touch with you about that, where do they go?
Well, there's a big giant bar at the top of our website that says listen to our podcast, and we have a landing page on our website. Yeah, there's contact info through there.
Good. Well, Jeanna Barrett, thank you very, very much for dropping by.
Yeah, Pilar, I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
A big thank you to Ross Winter for polishing the audio of this episode. And thank you, listeners, for choosing to listen to the 21st Century Work-Life podcast. Remember to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app, and you can check out the full show notes over at virtualnotdistant.com/podcasts. Talking of podcasts, we have another show you can listen to, Management Cafe, which you should also be able to find on all podcast apps. I have been Pilar Ortiz. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, enjoy.